Hi, I'm Amanda of Fabric Heart, and today we're going to make a stash-busting fabric rug with scrap batting. You're going to love this project. Let's talk about our supplies. We're using an OLFA yellow 6x18 mat, a magenta Ergo rotary cutter, a 60mm straight rotary cutter. We are also using some applique scissors. I love these things. And we have a collection of rulers. I use the 4.5 square and then my 6x12 rectangle. For materials, you're going to need 3 yards of quilting cotton and about 1.25 yards of 90-inch wide batting. Oh, and lots of thread, lots of poly thread that will hold up for a long time. So we have these pinks, some greens, blues, and yellows. Now, to figure out what order I want them in. What do I want on the outside edge? You know what? I kind of think I want pinks on the outside edge. So let's go maybe like this. And then maybe just because we have 2 blues, this is really much a guessing game. Like this. And then do I want greens? Where do I want the greens? Like you can just play around with it for hours. Do I want dark on the inside? No, I think I want dark on the outside. So let's go greens there. And I really am resisting the urge to put greens and yellow side by side. So let's do greens, pinks, like this. Do we want like this, or do we want, what do you think? This. So this is going to be outer edge into the middle. Ooh, I kind of like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so now we get to cut our strips. With this placement here, we can tell this number of strips in here is the same amount of strips in here as the same amount. Well, not quite. I think I cut this one a little short. But the further you get out from the middle, the more strips you need to take up more space. So think about that while you're cutting your strips. I like to throw caution to the wind and just see what happens. So I'm just going to cut as my heart desires. There are so many different OLFA mats that you could be using to cut your strips. There are large mats where you can just cut your fabric, lay it out flat, and cut it strip for strip. We have smaller mats. I'm going to use this yellow one here. I like it because it's yellow. Like really, let's be honest, that is the #1 reason why I like this mat. But I also like this mat because this is some of our thicker mat material, so you can use art knives on it. Often I'm cutting in a small space, and having the ability to have a space where I don't have to take up a lot of space or a lot of counter space with my mat is ideal. What I like to do is fold my fabric so that the folded edge and the selvage are together. I'm lining up one of the lines along the edge here and here, so I'm making sure that they're straight there at either end, and I'm using the 2.5-inch line and I'm cutting along there. I'm using my OLFA Ergo cutter. This is one of my favorites because it's pink, and every time I release then it closes, which is ideal for someone that hurts themselves all the time. I'm just going to cut along that edge, and it sounds beautiful every time. Move this down, line everything back up, and cut again. And you're going to keep going until you have all the strips you want. The minimum strips you would like here is probably around 40. I went a little overboard and went with 60. It's all up to you. Once you have all your strips cut, now it's time to arrange them in what order you would like them for in your rug. Have fun with this. There are no rules. Do what you think will look amazing. Okay, so now to put these into one long strip. Quilters, you are fully prepared for this step if you've done your own binding. If you haven't, this is how it's done. So we're going to lay one fabric. This is the right side up like this. The next strip of fabric is going to go on top of it with the right side facing each other. And then because I didn't cut off my selvages, I'm going to put them like this. And then we are going to sew from corner to quarter in a straight line. You can use any marking tool you want. I am using a pencil because we're going to sew on that line. It's not going to be on the outside of the finished product. And I'm going to just draw out on that diagonal from corner to corner there. And I'm going to sew on that line. But you're going to do that for every single strip, making sure that the right sides are together. So we're going to have a huge long strip. Now it's in one long strip. I lost the end. This is going to be fun. Okay, so now we need to trim these off 1/4 inch from here to take off the excess, and then we'll open it and it'll be one nice long strip. I'm going to use my ruler here, line up my 1/4 inch along the seam line, and then just trim this off. And then when you open it up, it's nice. Just like that. This project really is a nice meditative project. You have the same step over and over again, and it really, I love projects like this because I can just zone out, listen to a podcast, and just do the same thing over and over again.
Take a couple minutes just to iron through the strip, making sure everything is nice and flat, and pay attention where we've joined these strips so that we make sure they're not going to cause an issue throughout the rug.
To make the next part easier, we're going to roll this into a giant donut or roll, cinnamon roll, whatever you want to call it. There we go. We've got our first look at what the rug might look like. It's kind of exciting at this stage. Next step is to cut the batting that goes in the middle. For the quilters out there, and those of you that use batting on a regular basis, this is where all those offcuts from old quilts or old projects are going to come in handy. I keep these just in case I can use them for something, and this is the perfect project. I'm going to cut these up into strips for inside of my fabric, and I cut these to 2.5 inches. And I have found while making my rugs that I like to cut my batting just slightly smaller. So I'm going to cut these at 2 inches instead of 2.5, and I find that that just helps my rug lay flatter as I'm putting it together. So I'm going to cut these at 2 inches. And let me tell you, it feels good to use up some of these old scraps. And I'm cutting through a lot of layers here. And this is the time that if you're having, well, you don't have to cut through this many layers at a time. But when you're cutting through a lot of layers, sometimes it's actually better to get out your 60mm rotary cutter and use that. So I'm getting out this nice 60mm. It's a little bit bigger of a blade, and it's going to be easier to get through it all and clear the ruler because this batting is a little fluffier. Let's talk about putting our strips together. So I have a 2.5 inch strip of fabric, and then I have a 2 inch strip of batting. Batting does sometimes have a top side and a down side. For this project, it really doesn't matter which way is which. You don't even have to be consistent because everything's being folded in together. So I'm going to take this strip of fabric, lay the batting on top. Like at the beginning, it's the hardest part. And as it gets going, it's a little bit more straightforward. So mark the middle. You're going to fold each edge into the middle and then fold it on itself like that. So it's just like a double fold. And you're going to sew it. You can sew close to the edge to keep that closed, or you can sew down the middle. I've chosen to sew down the middle on this one. And what that looks like is this. I use a walking foot here, and I gauge the width to make sure that I'm folding it right on the foot of the machine, just to try to be a little bit consistent on that. And when you come to a point where you need to join a new batting, I just simply lay the next one on. And when you're folding it together, that's gonna, even if it comes apart a little bit there, it's not gonna make a big deal. As long as it doesn't end up with a giant gap between the two, you're going to be fine. So take this to your machine. This is a long process. There are tools that can help you with it, or you can just put it through the machine and fold as you go. I fold as I go.
Find the middle part of your strip and then fold each edge in to meet in the middle, and then fold it in half. And then you put it under your presser foot and start sewing. Use a 2.5 to 3 setting on your stitch length. The process at first is a little slow just to get it started, but once you have a good fold underway, it's a lot easier to keep on going. You're going to be here for a little bit of time, so this is the perfect opportunity to catch up on that show that you've been putting off, or listening to your favorite podcast. It's unfortunate that we can't live life in double speed like this video is right now, because it sure does look a lot quicker. You're going to keep on adding batting strips and folding and stitching until you're at the very end of the strip that you put together.
I'm going to just go through and remove all the twists and put it into the spin so it's kind of contained as I'm sewing it together. Some people will roll this into a ball. I find that I can never roll into a ball without twisting it completely, and it's chaos. So I'm just going to put it in the spin.
The hardest part of these rugs is starting the center, but I have a great trick for you and you're going to do amazing at it.
Because there's a lot of extra bulk in the middle, at the beginning end, you can undo some of your stitching and then remove some of this batting part. Because there's so much extra bulk going into the center, so I've removed that. I'm going to fold this back over so it looks like the rest of it. And then I can go from here and I can start to find a good distance away from where the batting is and start to make my circle there. And because there's less batting in there, it's going to be a little bit easier to maneuver that. Once you get going around here, you're going to want to make sure that the outside edge is laying flat and that you have the inside edge nice and pleated. So here, I would remove this excess tail because it's too much fabric there. And I've got a good circle starting here, and I could baste it, sew a couple stitches across it, and then I can start to maneuver this outside. And once you get this middle section done, it's really straightforward. The biggest area that we run into concerns or problems with rugs like this is they start to wave. So we want to set up properly for sewing so that we minimize the wave. Once this is stitched in place, like I can baste it with a long stitch and then go in and zigzag it around into the spiral. And that, not having the batting in the middle, really helps you get that started and going in a circle. Here, I basted it, so I went around and I basted with a long stitch across the middle. Then I started that circle and then I went back. So I got it started and I probably started stitching right about here. I went around a couple rounds and then I came back into the middle and finished this middle. Let's talk about machine setup for a second. I am really lucky and I have this really nice big sewing table attached to my sewing machine. If you have a machine that sinks into the table, you'll definitely want to use that. You really want just a really flat surface on either side because as your rug is feeding in, you want it nice and flat. If you don't have a flat, large surface, you just need to slow down, take some time, and then you're going to have to fold your rug as you go. I'm going to have to do that anyway. I could add books and stuff on either side of it to add more stabilization and a larger even surface. You figure out what works for you and the setup that you have. So I have this end that I don't have any batting in, and I'm going to cut it so that it's like 2 inches past the batting. Now that I have that like that, I'm going to then kind of make a ball, and I'm going to try to get that in a sort of circle like this. And now, since I have it just like this, I'm going to increase my stitch length. It's just a straight stitch to as long as it goes on my machine, and I'm going to sew directly across that. Okay, so I just sew it in place so that it's kind of, I'm not having to hold all the layers at the same time. And now, ooh, I need to change my bobbin color. I switched projects, so I have black in there. So I have that kind of held in place, and now I can start to roll it a little bit easier. And I'm going to baste it one more time. So I'm going to come in here and try to do another almost full circle. And when it's like this, I'm just going to baste it one more time so that this circle is done. Now I have this like better circle on the go, and it's going to be easier for me to continue adding to this. So now I'm going to switch my machine over to a zigzag, and I'm using a middle zigzag. And I'm going to make it really wide. I'm going to go up to 6. So we're going to look at how it's going to feed into our machine. So as we're building our rug, we don't want the excess going in here. We want it on this side. So this is making a P right now. I'm going to flip it so that when all I'm adding is going to be on the other side. So I'm going to have a Q here, and I'm going to zigzag this all together. So it's on the largest zigzag, and we're going to start adding. And I'm not starting in the middle, I'm just starting here. If your machine has a pivot or a knee lift where when it stops you can lift that foot, that really helps. And when I want to make adjustments, I'm going to make sure that my needle is on the left, and then I'm going to slowly add more. Every time you are going to take it off, just make sure you're locking that stitch in. So we have a circle starting for sure, and it definitely, this part is the trickiest, and once we get this really going, it flies. I can go back now and zigzag this part. There's the beginning of our rug. And don't worry too much if the middle isn't perfect. What you want is just like a general circle shape so that it continues growing as a circle. And remember, this is a rug. You're going to be walking on it. I tried to keep where you're seaming it together in the middle of your walking foot so you know that you're getting an equal balance on either side.
You want to make sure that the piece you're putting on and the piece that you're adding to are both lying flat as it goes under the needle. This will prevent bowing.
My rug has started to bow a little bit, so I'm going to focus the next few rounds trying to straighten this out, keeping everything nice and flat as it goes underneath the foot. If it starts to wave, we need to stop and take out a few rows and try again.
My focus here really is the strip that I'm adding on to keep it nice and flat as it's being attached, and making sure that the attachment point is also nice and flat. And this will even things out. Unless a wave has started, and in which case you need to remove at least 2 rows before the wave to even things out. Don't be tempted to just keep on going because it's going to get worse. I promise you will get worse.
Woo! Went completely off there. So if you go off your zigzag path, just go back and start a little bit further back and try again.
I've been able to even out the bowing, and I can keep on adding to my rug without any problem. As your size increases, you might have to fold your rug a bit. Just make sure that it is feeding nice and flat, and you shouldn't have any issues. Take your time, go slow. It is worth the time spent here. Keep on adding to your rug until you get about 5 inches from the end. And that's it.
Now I'm going to
finished
zigzag
your
the
very
end
first
of
rug.
this
You should
just
be really
so
proud of
that
yourself.
it's sealed in. Here, I'm going to fold this under, and so it lines up like that, and that's how I'm going to seal in the end.
I think this gives it a really nice finish, and that little tab is on the other side. It shouldn't bug you at all. And you're done your rug, and it's beautiful, and it's custom, and it's using up scraps. What could be more perfect than this? I hope you're inspired to make your very own rug, and I can't wait to see what color combinations you put together. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Amanda Brown from Fabric Heart.